Firstly, Mr. Ian Withers, in the Skype interview to the Commission on Monday, 14th of October 2019, stated that Mr. Berluis was in London on the day of the assassination of Gerard Wawo on 27th of November 1985 and returned to Seychelles the next day, if I understand clearly. My deceased husband cannot obviously refute the allegation, but I would like to produce proof to the Commission in the form of his passport with relevant stamps to show that he was indeed in Seychelles and not in London as alleged by Mr. Withers. I was not with Mr. Berluis in 1985 as I was living in Australia at the time, and our relationship started in November 1989, 3 years after he had left the government. When I discussed the question of Gerard Wawo's assassination with my husband, having heard different versions of the story, he told me that he left Seychelles on a private flight with an Austrian businessman on 22nd of November in the morning to go to Austria to sign the final agreement for the army vehicles which the Austrian company Pinzgauer was selling to the army. He arrived in Vienna early afternoon and met with the company officials and Seychelles consul in Vienna at the airport VIP lounge for about 2 hours, and later that evening of 22nd, he took a connecting flight to London in order to catch his flight back to the Seychelles on 23rd November, as he wanted to be back in the country for the Defence Forces Day on 25th of November. His passport stamp shows that this is correct. He arrived in London on 22nd of November and arrived in Seychelles on 24th of November. I attach copies of his diplomatic passport number 00002, valid from April 1982 to April 1987, and relevant dated stamps inserted. Secondly, I also wish to make a point to the Commission regarding a statement made by Mr. Paul Chow in which he stated that, quote, someone had related the story to him, end quote, about Mr. Berluis kicking a man with his army boots on. Let me say that I am sure that Mr. Berluis never wore army uniform at any time except for military parades and ceremonies, and knowing him as a professional, always strict on discipline and behaviour, I very much doubt this ever occurred. However, my problem is that the Commission is allowing witnesses like Mr. Paul Chow to make hearsay statements in public which are damaging to the characters of the persons concerned. Statements, he says, quote, someone told him, close quote, yet he cannot mention the name of the person who told him, especially as the person has passed away, and cannot refute the allegations. I wish to make it clear that I have no problem whatsoever with my deceased husband's name being mentioned, as he was the Minister of Defence till 1986, even though he cannot defend any of the accusations and allegations made against him, which is a pity. However, I do believe that for the sake of fairness, justice and transparency, the Commission should only allow people to make statements publicly where they have witnessed an event first-hand or have talked to the person concerned personally and not based on hearsay. In this case, Mr. Chow was not there. He was not a witness to the event, and he cannot mention who told him this happened. I thank you for your understanding in this matter and would be grateful if my letter could be read publicly. And we have the copies here of the passports and bigger ones of the stamps. A diplomatic passport. So, apologies and thank you. And today seems to be a day where we're having to apologize a lot because people are being upset about what witnesses are saying. So I would reiterate what we said this morning. Please only tell us that which you have a reasonable basis to believe is true. I'm not ruling out hearsay altogether because we're not bound by rules of evidence. But some hearsay can be reliable and relied upon by us. But please be very careful, especially when you're naming names of people. Thank you. Now, can we call the next witness? Thank you.
Mr. Emmanuel Faure.
Dire la vérité, toute la vérité, rien que la vérité, et qui bon Dieu aide moi.
Thank you, Mr. Faure. Sorry to have kept you waiting. We're running late today. My apologies for that. The Commission called you today in relation to case number, is it, Michael? 009. Mr. Jimmy Albert Marcel Zatt, because you were named by Mr. Zatt as the buyer of his property while you were the principal secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1978. And his claim is that he had started reclaiming land with a contractor. It wasn't completely finished, that land reclamation, and he wanted to sell the land, and he'd had offers in the realm of 800,000 from two buyers, but the Ministry of Lands said you cannot sell it because it's not finished. So he couldn't finish it, but then you came along and offered him a very low amount, and the Ministry of Lands said that you were allowed to buy it for that low amount. And because he was in a situation, he felt that he had no choice but to sell you the property. And he claims that he was pressured into selling the property to you. So we've called you to see if you can throw any light on that perspective of events that were presented by Mr. Zatt this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I think Mr. Zatt, he was one of our first statisticians way back in the late 60s or early 70s. I hope as a statistician he can get his facts right. First of all, I was not a PS in 1978. And I wish he had consulted me before he came to you with all this baloney. I started work in the government 10 weeks after the coup d'etat in 1977. In fact, I came here after finishing my studies at Sussex in mid-August 1977. And it took me a few years, after a lot of hard work, to become a PS. I think I became a PS, I'm not too sure, I think it's 1985 or 86. So right from the word go, Mr. Zatt has got his facts wrong. I was not a PS in 1978. I don't want to waste your time in what I've done in government. I started as an economist, working with President René and Robert Grandcourt. And then I worked with Dr. Maxime Ferrari as a minister in the period from about 1978 until 1982-83. Just want to say that my working relationship with Albert René was excellent, Robert Grandcourt excellent, Dr. Maxime Ferrari very, very good, a very, very hard-working minister, and he left, I don't know whether 82, 83. Then in 1984, 83, 84, I then worked with Madame Danielle de Saint-Jean, who was the new PS, and it was only in 85, 86 that I became a PS. So the first point is that Mr. Zatt has got it completely wrong that I was a PS in 1978.
When did you buy the property?
I bought the property in the mid-90s. I'm not too sure, 93 or 94. I can get all this information, provide to you. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm a little forgiving on getting the years wrong myself because I realize it's so long ago. It's 42 years, well, from the coup d'etat. So I'm a little forgiving on getting the dates wrong for people.
All right.
Yeah,
No, that's not an issue. The real issue is the man is saying, I pressured him to sell his land for a low amount of money. Again, that's a lot of rubbish, a lot of baloney. We had a meeting in the mid-90s. I can't remember exact date, whether it was 1993 or 94, that we can verify at the government registrar of lands. I think the parcel of land I bought from him is H3686. But I'll have to re-verify this. Now, what happened is that I met him. He was drunk, and he said, Mr. Faure, I'll sell you that piece of land. I said, yes. I said, are you sure? Because you are in a drunken state. When you are sober, I'll handle the matter. A couple of weeks later, and again, I cannot remember the exact dates, he said, okay, I'll sell it to you. Now, whether Mr. Dauphin had reclaimed the land or not, I cannot remember. All I remember is that it was a piece of land which was unfinished by the sea near a place called Capatia at Pointe Kona, the place at Pointe Kona on the sea. I then spent a lot of money to reclaim the land, and then because it cost me so much, and then I did not like the area, so I sold it to somebody else, and this person then built a block of flats on it, and then this person he sold it to another person, and the other person is now selling it to another person. It seems that area called Pointe Kona, the area, is, I don't know, it's a bit of a curse area because I've not been able to hold it onto it. The next chap built something, did not hold onto it. The new owners are trying to sell it. I don't know, I'm not superstitious, but I'm just telling you. So there was absolutely no forcing the man to sell his land. And the other thing I do not like at all, he has mentioned the name of Daniel de Saint-Jean in it, and Monsieur Dauphin de Rieux. Now, we know, most of us of a certain age, Monsieur Dauphin is dead, Madame Danielle de Saint-Jean is also dead, so both persons cannot defend themselves, which is rather sad. Now, anybody in Seychelles around this table who knows Monsieur Dauphin and who knows Madame Danielle de Saint-Jean, whether we like them or not, they can confirm that these two individuals are of a very high degree of integrity. People you could not corrupt them, okay? So, and I did not buy the land for Danielle de Saint-Jean and all that, No. I mean, you know Madame de Saint-Jean, you know what she did for this country. I mean, we were working, I don't want to digress, Madam Chairman, but you could ask your colleagues here about Danielle de Saint-Jean. She was one of the best ministers we ever had. Together, we were running 3 ministries in one. As PS, as permanent secretary, principal secretary, we call it here. We were running the ministry of, at the end of her life, she passed away in 97. By then, we were running the ministry of external affairs, planning and environment. Okay, one lady. And I was a PS. So from a work rate, she was doing the work of 3 ministers. In fact, compared to today's government, I would say she was doing the work of 10 ministers. We all know her, and I would like to say categorically that she never knew about this transaction, because in 93 or 94, I was then not in foreign affairs, I was running the development bank. She called me in 94 to join her to run the Ministry of External Affairs, Planning and Environment. So I have not much more to say, except to say that the names mentioned in Mr. Zat's submission, Danielle de Saint-Jean and Monsieur Dauphin de Rieux, have nothing to do with this land transaction. Absolutely nothing. And these two persons which are now defunct, they are dead, they're no longer with us, are people of high integrity and would not have got involved. Even if I had gone to Madame de Saint-Jean, assuming I had said, Madame, can you help me get some money to buy this? She would have said, Emmanuel, no, no, no. I'm a minister. She was not that kind of person. Now, coming back to the issue that whether I pressurize the man to sell his property, the answer is no. I mean, I could not use my influence as a bank manager to say, I want to buy this land from you for a low price. Mr. Zat is not a fool. He's a statistician. And at the time, there was no pressure. I'm talking 1993, 94, 95, around that period of time. So there was no pressure on him to sell it to me. I know in Seychelles, because it's a small place, land is seen like something extraordinary. In most countries of the world, land is just an asset. You buy, you sell. But here, because of, I don't know, of our size, our culture, our French culture, land is seen, people are very, very emotional about land, extremely emotional about land. Even I am, all of us around this table are. And when we feel that we've had to sell for a low price, we feel we've been badly done. But this is normal in Seychelles or anywhere in the world. You feel that you could have got a better price for your land had you maybe negotiated with somebody else, etc. Madam, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I think he used to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Zat, right? So there was this whole issue in his complaint that he used to work there, and then he had a spine problem, and when he went back to go to work, he was told by the minister to stay home, and then he was dismissed.
I mean, I cannot recall. All I know is that Mr. Zat was initially the best statistician we ever had. I think Mr. Green and most of us around the table would remember him. He was the first statistician we had. When I came back in 1977, working as an economist under the President René and Robert Gancourt, we had to rely on him for information, for statistics. So my understanding is that the Department of Statistics was never really linked to us. I think it was at one time with Ministry of Finance, but we'll have to dig into it. But I don't recall Mr. Zat having worked for us. I do not recall, but maybe more research has to be done into this aspect. I know that he had some problems, some issues. I don't know the nature of the problems he had.
You don't think he had political problems? Political problems because he wasn't like conforming, or he was speaking out against a socialist system, or?
We all had political problems. Even I, as a member of the government, I had political problems. Marie-Thérèse can vouch for that. All of us around the table. Although we work in the government at the time of the one-party state, it was not a homogeneous, everybody that worked for that government were treated as elite, as good. Even us, people like me, were seen as not really being with the system. So it could be that Mr. Zat could well be that they may have considered him to be not with us. This was a bit of the philosophy at the time, and still is today.
So
I mean, still today, the same thing.
Yeah. So you weren't with them. You weren't with them.
For me, I differentiated two things: the politics of the island, the politics of René, because even within René's government, there were differences of opinion. You had the more left-wing, the more centrist, and the more right-wing. I was more in the center. I mean, I will not mention names, but we all know who were more on the left. Those were the guys that were more eager to seize land and etc.
And were they more successful, the guys on the left, generally?
In some instances, not always, not always, because as an economist, our job was to try and steer the economy midway. So you had some eager beavers, for example, those that would say, okay, we have to take all lands. But then you had people more in the middle, I would say, like Maxime Ferrari, Dr. Ferrari, myself, Robert Gancourt, and then the PS of Finance, Mr. Guy Morel. We were more in the middle trying to say, okay, well, you got your left-wing tendencies, but you have to feed the people, we have to clothe them, and you cannot afford to be too much on the left. It is true that this period in our history, we're being pulled by all sides, pulled by the USSR, pulled by the US, by the non-aligned movement, etc. And we steered a mid-course. That's why people like Daniel de Saint-Georges, Maxime Ferrari, they were able, from a foreign affairs point of view, to steer a mid-course, and we were able to benefit from everyone. We were able to get foreign aid from Russia, from the Soviet Union, from North Korea, from Cuba.
How do you get aid from North Korea?
Well, at the
You
time,
mean soldiers?
no.
Because they didn't have any money to-
They had excess cement or steel, and so they provided us with help. No. It was purely. Well, I was not a politician. I'm not a politician. I'm an economist, and my job is to obtain money to develop the islands. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Zat alleged that he went to see Mr. Rene to ask to be moved to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and at the time he had already had this issue of the land at Point Gona that he was trying to get fixed up, that Mr. Dauphin was working on, and he felt that Mrs. Dauphin did not want him to join the ministry, but eventually he did. But I think he lasted about 5 months there, because then he had this spine problem. Do you recall in the office?
No.
And that's how.
Because
then you got into
he
the
has to get
land.
his dates right. I mean, if he can tell me exact dates or approximate dates, because I was, as you know, I was in and out of foreign affairs, and then I really came back in 1994 into foreign affairs again. I mean, I had been back and forth, so I do not recall Mr. Zat's case. But it could be. I mean, what we have to do, Marie-Thérèse, we have to go to DPA and ask for an employment record. Then we could maybe come back and double check all these things. Even I've asked Ministry of Foreign Affairs for an employment record. They say they cannot give me. I have to write a letter to DPA. So we have to ask Mr. Zat. Even me, I have to write a letter to DPA to get my employment records. It should be something automatic, but it's not here. Okay.
There was also an issue of you talking to Monsieur Changtab at the time, the chief of land surveying and planning, to make arrangements for you to purchase this land, because the works were not finished and therefore it was not possible. This is why he wasn't able to sell it to the people who were offering him more money.
I do not recall. All I know is that he had an unfinished piece of reclamation. He had started it. It was 10% done. And then I negotiated with him in good faith. I bought it from him. I then spent a lot of money to finish it off, to complete the reclamation. And to do so, you have to go to the Ministry of, I think it was called National Development at the time. And Mr. Changtab was the head of that unit responsible for reclamation. Yeah. So I had to go to him to ask his permission. Yeah.
Mr. Faure, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you confirm how much you bought it from Mr. Zat, this plot of land, and how much you sold it to the next owner of?
Honestly, I cannot recall. I'll have to go back to the registrar and look at it. For me, it was, I wish I had never got involved in this, because when I look back, I had wanted to build a house there to stay at Point Kona, by the sea, next to the 369 discotheque. Now it's called 369, I think. Yeah? 369. Okay. So I do not recall how much I paid him and how much I resold. All I know is that I spent a lot of money to try and fix that piece of land, and I wish I had never got involved, because at the end of the day, it was a loss-making operation. Because, you know, you buy a piece of, it was a right for reclamation I bought from him, a right for reclamation. And then when I looked at the amount of money I spent, and then I had to sell it, and then I had the bank chasing me to pay back the debt. So I mean, and luckily you are a cleric. You don't get you don't have financial pressures from banks and these bastards. Sorry, from banks. They're real bastards.
I don't know.
No, keep away from them. So I had to sell it to them. I had to sell in the end. I could not keep it. I'm sorry. I had to sell it. Thank you.
Do you still work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
No, I left government in 2004, 5. Again, I need to get the record straight. But you know, having worked in government does not give you, having been a PS in Seychelles, it would have been better had I been a street cleaner, to be honest with you, because you don't get any benefits from it. If anything, you get squeezed. I give you the last example is that there's been a water scandal at La Misère. I live in the area. I asked for the water to be analyzed. I never got any analysis. And today, 4 or 5 years down the road, I still call the Ministry of Health. They tell me they're working on the results. So just to give you an example, and all the people around me got some form of compensation. I never got. So having been a PS in all these years in government, it had its good, I must be very frank, it was a good job. I did a good job. I was an excellent economist. That's what I claim to be. But you didn't get any privilege. And still today, you don't get any privilege. Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. We appreciate it greatly when people come, when we ask them to come at a particular time, and then we make them wait. So I'm very sorry for having to made you wait.
It's okay. It's okay. I just want to just say before I leave that a few words about Madame Danielle de Saint-Jean. I know it's not the occasion to use that. She has passed away in 97, but having her name mentioned here, I would like the country to know that this woman was an extraordinary person. She did an excellent job for this country. You may have not liked her or not like her, but one thing we all agree is that she was a very hard-working person. She gave her life for these islands, and we should all be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. I'm sure they're appreciated, especially by her family, right? Thank you. So you are now free to go. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you.
I think, thanks very much. Bye. I think we're going into closed session, right? Yes, we are. We're going into closed session. Sorry. Removing the people. Thank you. Closed session? Yep. We in closed session now? Oh.
SBC pour répéter bonne session travail la semaine, commission La Vérité, Réconciliation et l'Unité nationale pendant week-end, ça veut dire samedi et dimanche, depuis 9h au matin, le SBC 3.